Good evening. Welcome, Nicholas,
Hi.
Environmental Coffee House, and I am so happy that you're with us. I'm going to let you really run the show tonight. I don't think I even need to be on. So say hi to everybody, and I'll put up things and do that for you, and tell us what's going on in Nebraska.
Yeah, hope everyone's doing all right tonight. Well, the situation in Nebraska, at least in outside of the Missouri River, is generally improving. The waters are going down. I've gone down pretty significantly along some of the other rivers, Platte River, Elkhorn River. Those rivers had record flood stages at multiple locations. The Missouri River had record flood stages at multiple locations, basically south of Omaha and down into Missouri. I think the St. Joseph, Missouri may have broken a record. A lot of these records were set back either in 2011 in the Missouri flood at that time, which was Missouri River flood at that time, which was much not nearly as widespread as this flood event, or date back to 93 in the major flooding that occurred in the Missouri River and the Mississippi River. As far as impacts are concerned, there's been estimates right now, and those estimates will change. They'll probably go up, especially with regards to private property damage. But right now, Nebraska appears to have suffered at least 1.3 to 1.5 billion dollars in damage. Over a billion of that damage is to agriculture, so flooded farms, damaged or destroyed equipment, lost livestock, almost $500 million in livestock losses. Another roughly 400 to 500 million in expected losses to or delays to agriculture in terms of crops, being able to actually grow crops. Some farmers just won't be able to do it this year, so there'll be major crop losses in parts of Nebraska and Iowa. In Iowa, the estimates for damage are around $1.6 billion. So this is at least a $3 billion flood event. And there's also damage to cropland in southeast South Dakota, where there were records set along the Big Sioux River up there. There was in Nebraska, there was significant damage to the infrastructure. 41 businesses, the last I heard, have been destroyed.
Wow.
2,067 homes have been destroyed. 200 miles of state roads have been damaged, state managed roads. US 81, I know, suffered a lot of damage in northeast Nebraska. And at least as of 2 days ago, there were 16 state highway bridges that were impassable. That's probably improved because not all of them fell, but I know of at least 5 bridges in the state that were destroyed, including a couple that I've actually been on before in separate parts of the state. They're both no longer exist.
Oh my God.
Right now.
Wow.
The obviously, besides the flood, there was also the extreme blizzard event out in western Nebraska, southwest South Dakota, Nebraska Panhandle, and eastern Colorado. There was gusts of between 90 and 120 miles per hour in Colorado. 90 to 100 on the plains, and 100 to 120 in some of the higher terrain. Parts of Texas had gusts anywhere between 80 to 110 miles per hour. Texas Panhandle, North Texas. So there was significant damaging wind gusts associated with the actual cyclone. The cyclone set minimum pressure records, statewide pressure records in Colorado and New Mexico and possibly Kansas as well. So this was the lowest, the most intense by minimum central pressure. It was likely the most intense low pressure system that was ever observed in Colorado, New Mexico, and Kansas. So for this region, it was basically, some people have called it a hurricane, inland hurricane like storm. I've sort of referred to it as a superstorm. It produced this mega flood event by mass melting huge amounts of snowpack across east central and eastern Nebraska into western Iowa and far southeast South Dakota, far southwest Minnesota. Basically, that entire snowpack that ranged from several inches to more than a foot of snow, depending on where you were, melted completely within about 24 to 48 hours, with temperatures during the period of the storm rising from the 30s in some cases to the 60s. And it caused mass melting of the snowpack, caused it caused rainfall on top of that snowpack. So you probably had 2 or 3 inches of liquid equivalent water melt out of the snow, and then another 1 to 3 inches of rainfall on top of it. So you may have had the equivalent of a rainfall event of 3 to 6 inches, or 4 to 6 inches fall within a 24, 36 hour period on ground that was mostly frozen because it was covered in snow. And so you didn't have the soils didn't have the ability to take in the water to reduce the runoff. So you had tons of water that couldn't go anywhere but race over to rivers.
Unbelievable.
And I mean, it flooded the Niobrara River along the border of South Dakota and Nebraska, destroyed a 100-year-old dam, caused a flash flood of ice, large ice boulders and rock, and frigid waters that destroyed part of town. I've been on that bridge before because it goes from the town of Niobrara to Niobrara State Park. That's been totally destroyed. Caused, of course, flooding along the Platte River. It caused major flooding along the Elkhorn River. The National Weather Service office in Valley, the employees there had to evacuate. They're still not there. Apparently, the office is dry, but they're, as far as I know, yet they're not there. But they had to evacuate because of that. And many of the roads in northeast Nebraska were just impassable because of floodwaters, or towns were blocked off by flooding going on in other places because of overrunning water over roads or damage to bridges. So it's basically as bad as you could imagine it. I mean, the impacts now are to the infrastructure, very, very significant. Mm-hmm. The impacts down the road in the coming months and in years, honestly, is to the agriculture of the Central Plains and Midwest. I mean, it's we've had a lot of smaller farmers that have probably lost everything, and they don't have the ability to recover from it. And then on top of it, you have these tariffs that have been put in place as part of the trade war between Trump and the government of China that have cost the state's farmers more than $1 billion, and another $1 billion for the farmers in Iowa.
In what? So cost them in what? Cost them how? In what? I'm sorry.
Oh, $1 billion.
In the tariffs because of not being able to sell, import what they need?
Yeah. I mean, basically, I think it's like the tariffs on
Mm-hmm.
or on the soybean crop. I think in particular,
Mm-hmm.
and there are others, but they basically lost a lot of money because China won't take the products.
Right.
um,
That's what I think was getting back
yeah,
to.
and then
Uh
on top of it, the um, the um, the relief that they got from the federal government was meager in comparison. So it just doesn't really help them in a serious manner, especially as the trade war just goes on and on and on. And I heard that I'm not sure why, I don't remember why, but I know cattle, like head of cattle, have the price of cattle have gone down, so they can't get a lot of money off of that anymore. And in some cases, they lost a lot of cattle. Like I've seen stories about people losing, dozens, or dozens, tens of dozens of cattle,
it's
especially
awful.
calves from the flooding. If a lot of calves are born during this time of year, and they had to deal with the blizzard conditions, they had to deal with the standing water. Some of them were trapped on little islands, and they couldn't get out. And some of them can die of hypothermia or other
Right.
issues. I mean, it's just it's
You know what? If it can happen there, it can happen anywhere. And I know it's pixelated for me, so I'm going to keep myself a little. I have terrible internet tonight, and this is your go. Um, 8 o'clock must be a difficult time for us because everybody else is on. um, well, hi, Michael. Rain or snow? He says very bad, very bad. Well, it is.
yeah,
It's really sad because I mean, and now on the other side of the world in Africa, we have Mozambique. And you know what? You know what's really bittersweet today is what World Water Day, and
yeah,
and where the water is not needed, and then where it is desperately needed, it is not. You know
yeah,
what? Can we talk a little bit about the effects of all of the things in our atmosphere that we've done that have led
yeah.
to this kind of catastrophic flooding in Nebraska? I mean, I've seen it in 2015 in Nebraska, forgive me. And I've seen it, I've seen other
We
times
had that really bad in Lincoln, actually, I think in 2015.
where you are.
Yeah.
Jeez. Well, listen, tell us about that link. I'd like to hear it.
So, so basically, well, first, what I'll do is go into the science, and then to some of the issues that perhaps people have with it. So basically, what's been discovered, I think one of the earlier pioneers of this is Jennifer Francis out of Rutgers, and others have taken it on as well, including the bigger names like Stefan Ramsdorff in Germany, and obviously Michael Mann here in the U.S. is the concept that a rapidly warming Arctic has impacts on the mid latitudes of the United States, or mid latitudes of the northern hemisphere, including the United States, Europe, etc. Basically, what's happening is that egg warms rapidly and really abruptly. It's warming extremely fast. It causes the jet stream to weaken because the jet stream is based on temperature contrast between the tropics in the mid latitudes in the polar regions. Obviously, polar regions spend several months in polar night and then warm up somewhat in the summer months, but it's always in a stable climate, the stable climate of the past, the Holocene that we've lived in up until obviously recently. You have a cold region and it's cold throughout the atmosphere, and that promotes uh, a circulation that has winds flowing from west to east, the westerly winds of the mid latitudes, and in the area of the strongest temperature contrast in the upper atmosphere is where you have the jet stream. And the faster the jet stream is, the stronger you have, the stronger the Coriolis force, the tendency to direct pass off to the right in the northern hemisphere, the left in the southern hemisphere. So you have usually a very strong, relatively straighter jet stream with with waves, but not necessarily huge. Very, very often do you get huge waves that sit and stick around very long. So it's very, they call in meteorology, progressive. It progresses from west to east a lot.
Nicholas, can this be replicated anywhere in the world now?
This event, yeah, and the reason for that goes into the explanation. So basically, as the Arctic has warmed, the jet stream gets weaker. As a result, it doesn't progress. Your waves don't progress as far west to east as easily. You get bigger waves. They stick around a particular location longer. So some areas get persistent, very anomalous heat. Other places get persistent, very anomalous cold. Even if that cold is warmer than it used to be because of global warming, it's still anomalously cold for that time. And in between, you get these intense storm systems, cyclones that can produce these very heavy rainfall events, these very intense low pressure centers of low pressure, very powerful winds. That is what is happening with increasing frequency, particularly in the northern hemisphere, because of loss of Arctic sea ice promotes more heat coming into the Arctic because of less reflectivity of sunlight back into space. So Arctic warms even faster, the more ice is lost, feeding back into this weakening of the jet stream. So you produce these intense events. I mean, you can look at other places. So here in the central U.S., we had a lot of abnormally cold weather. Then you go to Europe and it's ridiculously warm. You're having record temperatures, all-time record temperatures for winter in 60-degree weather in England or something in February. It's absolutely crazy. And the thing with these huge waves is that not only do they promote persistently abnormal patterns, but once those waves do move on, then you get massive swings back to another regime. So that happened last week. Basically, we had very persistent cold weather. Then this storm produced by this significant wave in the atmosphere, in the upper atmosphere, shot up the temperature into the 60s. You had mass melting of snow. It's not the first time such a phenomenon has ever happened, but it happened on a very large, wide scale and happened very abruptly and ended up producing this essentially was a mega flood, a historic record-breaking flood that crushed previous records and caused massive amounts of damage, catastrophic damage. Meanwhile, you go to, say, where I was born and raised, Seattle, Washington. They had record snow in February. They had some of the coldest weather they've had there in decades. And now they're breaking records for March temperatures, with temperatures well into the 70s, which for Seattle is equivalent to normal in July. So, that's what happens when you have these huge waves. It's not only just about your climate warming everywhere, and in pretty much most places of the earth, it is warming persistently or consistently, but you get these persistent waves that stick you in a pattern for a long time, either deliver you with a terrible drought or heat, or they swing you into cold or snow or heavy rain, and you get wild swings between the two. that your infrastructure can't handle. They happen at weird times of the year, so your crops can't handle them, or even, as is the case in Nebraska, a lot of farmers won't even have a chance to plant crops because their farms are gone.
Right, Nicholas. What does that do then if they don't plant crops? Where this is the breadbasket, and where is the commerce going? So who's losing out?
Well, I mean, I do know of a story that I heard actually just yesterday of the fact that because of damage to railways, or at least they may not be completely damaged, but they're underwater. Central California farmers are not able to get some of their feed from Nebraska because the trains aren't running. So you've not only lost you've not only have lost productivity in the area of the disaster, but you've also are putting stress on productivity far away. I mean, that's part of the problem with that's what people don't get with climate change, especially the nature of abrupt climate change, where everything is going faster, faster, faster. You more than ever, we're interconnected, but the more interconnected we become, the more advanced our civilization to become, the more CO2 we put in the atmosphere, the more we've altered the climate, and the more we've set up the what I called in I did a post in my blog called on patreon.com/meteorologist Nick Humphrey. I did a post discussing this issue, the feedback monster. Basically we've set off a bunch of feedbacks that would make things get worse. We've done more of that. The more advanced we've gotten, the more interconnected we've gotten, but we depend on the interconnectivity. So you have a major disaster, a series of disasters that cause the inability of one region to produce what it produces or transport it to other areas, then other areas suffer. And we've had been a lot of concern about this as far as the ability of the developing world to deal with climate change, and the dependency on the developed world in a lot of cases for food aid and other things. But this is an issue in the countries themselves, in both the developed countries, the ability to transport and maintain the more hits it's taking more and more every single decade, every single year, the more loss you get in terms of not only the ability to adapt to those changes, but the ability to maintain business as usual.
Well, we can't do that. So, being that it is what it is now, would it be something to start proposing that everywhere, at least in the United States, that everybody starts producing locally and not sending out, not relying so much on all this outside commerce? I mean, we have to change, obviously. Do you have thoughts about that one?
Yeah, I think part of the reason why we have the way it is in the first place is because there was always it was considered a mutual benefit. So there are places that don't maybe have a certain resource that another place has. So I mean that's the whole nature of trade, really. We don't have that. We have this.
I like avocados.
And so in order to make everything local, you have to acknowledge that there's certain products, certain things you will not get from far away anymore. You're going to be, getting what your environment can grow, what your resources can produce. That's it. So if you're in the Pacific Northwest, you're going to get what is available in the Seattle area. If you're in here, you're going to get what's available here. So it makes sense because it ironically can build it's easier to build resiliency locally than trying to deal with the complexities of building it in an interconnected web that gets more complex the bigger it gets. The more complex it gets, the easier it is to hit one domino and the whole thing crashes down. Because I mean, there's literally farmers in the Central Valley of California that they're already dealing with the effects of climate change themselves, with more extreme heat, more crazier storms, the fires. They're raging like monsters, and they have their farms and they try and get their feed, and now they can't get their feed. And who knows when the trains will start going again?
Where would we import feed from? From what country?
I don't know. Maybe China will do it. They'll slap a tariff on it.
Yeah, and put metal shavings in it. Jesus. Well, I'll tell you, it's so complex, and I know you come at it from the climate change aspect of everything, and other people understand the commerce aspect. And how about the toll? There's two tolls. There's the people toll, the human toll to the people that are having hardships, and the animal toll. Let's talk a little bit about what being in the state, what's going on with the people toll. What's happening with people I've seen the devastation.
Well, luckily I'm not personally experiencing the hardship right now. We did have some friends of ours that had to evacuate in one city as one of the rivers did rise, but luckily their home didn't get impacted by flooding. It's I think for a lot of people, it's probably what you expect. I think there's a lot of shell shock about how bad it actually was, and maybe some shell shock about how bad it actually is, like in terms of the impacts that we'll see in the future with as far as the damage just to the agricultural interests of the state. I mean, this state has its two biggest cities are Omaha and then Lincoln, where I am, and then it's a ton of small towns, and the small towns, a lot of them were either isolated or they had to deal with their lives being turned around. In some cases, they actually lost their home, and I think there's a lot of, I know that here in the plains, one of the biggest issues has been the mental health of the farmers themselves.
Oh my God.
I read some stories about some of those issues that a lot of farmers, they just set aside for a second y'all's views on agriculture, industrial versus not, or whatever, as far as the type of diets we should have. The farmers themselves, I don't really know very many farmers, but just dealing with, just understanding who they are as people, and what other people have told me who have been in that position, or grew up in farming families. They take their job as farmers really seriously. They take it very seriously. They care about their work. They have that sort of stereotypical intense work ethic. And they care about their animals. They care about the ones that they slaughter. They care about the ones that they use for dairy. They care about their animals, livelihoods, as long as for what they are, for what their purpose is. They do care about their animals, and so the losses to their animals, it means something. I think it does mean something, obviously, to them, monetarily. I mean, it's a catastrophe, but to actually lose a creature that was their responsibility to take care of. Like in some cases, there were farmers that had to they tried to get as many of their farm livestock to other farms that weren't going to flood, or if there was a flash flood coming, they had to decide, how long can I stay to get as many of my animals out of here. In some cases, they had to leave. They had to leave some of them behind, and some of them died. It's just it's like any other business or any other, especially smaller farmers where it's a family thing. You built something and then you lose it, and then what's next? It's not like even building a regular small business. It's like you need clean soils. You need soil. You need clean soil. You need clean water. You need animals that in some cases take a fair amount of time to grow up. You need all these things. You need this incredibly expensive equipment, and now all of that's been completely just annihilated. Even if you have insurance, even if you have the things, it's like, can you really depend on being able to get back into that business? And with all the losses that you've suffered and the loss of your animals, I think there's going to be, a lot of hard decisions made by some of the farmers around here, because I hate to say it, but for farming in this region of the world, it's only going to get worse. You're going to have more drought. Yeah. You're going to have more extreme flood events. Some of them may not be necessarily these river floods. Some of them could be flash floods. They swamp your home, swamp your farm, destroy everything, and then it dries out. And rapid swings between the two, and weird seasonality that doesn't make any sense, that make your crops difficult to grow. It's just going to get worse, and we're already seeing that in other parts of the world. Climate change is a global systemic event. It's not just a U.S. event. And so even if you don't have something bad happening here, you have something bad happening in Mozambique. You don't have something bad happening in Mozambique, you have something bad happening in Australia. Events that used to be rare and right. Anywhere in the world are suddenly everywhere simultaneously.
And people will ask, well, okay, so given the situation, now what? What do we do? How do we get through this? And you're a meteorologist. I mean, you certainly don't have answers on this, how to change all this, but it does beg to give it a minute. It's how do you change it? You don't. We can't. we can live with it. We have to live with it and change all our practices, but how do we change this?
The thing with climate change, and I try to make this clear in my writing, and yeah, there were grain bins that were collapsed and destroyed, so it was actually loss of like. But the thing is that most people, meaning anybody from deniers, like outright climate change deniers, but also even those that acknowledge the issues of climate change, they don't really appreciate the forces that they're up against. It was a force of humanity that initiated the process and continues to basically put salt in the wound at this point, with more carbon dioxide emissions, more growth, more all of this. But the monster that we've unleashed from the earth, it's almost trying to combat a god. The only comparison I can put forth is like the Titans versus the Olympians, except we're not even close to the Titans. We don't have, we think we have all this technology, but the earth is the most powerful force on earth. And we have unleashed a force that is still mind-boggling, even to me. I'm a scientist. I'm a meteorologist, but I have I've taken some coursework in climate, and climatology, and physical climate, and so but also I have an understanding of a lot of the same, thermodynamics and physics and everything else. And it's still like I don't I understand what's happening, but I still kind of know that I don't fully appreciate the beast that's been released. And talk about the Jennifer Hines talks about the methane monster. There's the methane monster, the peatland monster, the sea ice monster, the jet stream and AMOC in the oceans monster, the polar ice cap monster. There's forces at work that are functioning and by physical laws that have been around for 14 billion years, and if we had appreciated those things a long time ago, and I don't, and you could say a few decades ago, but really it might have had to have been 10,000 years ago when we started this whole kick towards trying to gain more and more energy and grow as a species and do more with more energy as a species. Maybe we could have gone on much longer with a more stable climate, less pollution, everything else. But right now we're kind of watching the beast be released.
Yeah, what
it's really it's only the only response the Earth can have to the force that we have applied to it. I mean, we were powerful enough to apply a force in the first place like this. I don't say any of this stuff lightly because obviously I have a family. I still do my thing in life and live my life. I still try to do what I can, but I can't be like some of these other scientists and be like, oh, we can just do this thing or that thing and everything will be good. We'll be able to limit this, and and it's just like
who is saying that? What scientists have their head up their asses that far?
Michael Mann.
Is he really saying that we're going to solve everything? I mean, I don't want to be a defeatist here.
I don't want to. I don't want to attack individual people.
No,
really, this is more of a state of mind than it is about those individuals.
Okay, staying positive so everybody doesn't freak out.
Yeah, well, and so people don't fight each other for no reason. I mean, I don't really have any reason to go after those guys. I mean, at the end of the day, the evidence from multiple disciplines, so looking at it from an interdisciplinary perspective, speaks for itself. The actual observations as just being a normal person speak for themselves. The paleo record speak for themselves. I mean, we've had changes in climate much slower than this. I mean, 4 degrees, 5 degrees in a few thousand years that have wiped out most of the life on this planet and took millions of years to recover. And we're doing these kind of changes. I mean, even the IPCC, the kind of changes they're talking about is in a century. I mean, that would usually be over thousands of years. I mean, it's and we're thinking and we're like, oh well, we can adapt to mega droughts and superstorm, hurricane, monster, whatever. It's just like you sit there and you're reading this, and it's like, is this like the Twilight Zone where humans just somehow don't die, but everything else dies around us, like the
obviously not going to happen.
Biologists are admitting that we're in a 6th mass extinction, but somehow we're not at risk of being killed off in significant numbers. There's like 7.5 billion of us. I mean, I don't want any of this to happen.
Of
But
course, nobody, none of us do, but it's just
yeah,
the more I see everything happening, and it's not because it's a gloomy, snowy, yucky Friday night here. It's because I'm looking at the world. I'm standing here looking at the world and what's happening, and I can't see any amount of carbon capture, for example, or they're talking about the let's do the sulfate, let's do the geoengineering exercises. But the thing is, if we have to stop, and then if we stop, let's say flying, we have global dimming effect. We have all these things, and I don't see
I mean,
where
the best. You know what the best
change.
the best geoengineering method is? Just burn more coal. You
Oh,
know that they're
right.
going to do that. You know that some coal company is going to argue. Why do this geoengineering thing when these papers say that if industrial production with coal is reduced by 30 something percent, you'll get 1 degree right. Why don't we just burn more coal? We get the energy and we protect the world from global warming. There's some weird logic out there.
Well, they'll just make more inhalers for people's
the,
asthma, and they'll manufacture a whole genre for
there you go. I have asthma. I'll need more. I can buy me a mask.
Or wait, even better. They'll do genetic work on human bodies so that they'll eradicate all of the pollution diseases. Oh, listen, it could go crazy, right? We could go into a sci-fi world.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere now is even over the course, even if it were to take hundreds of years, is more than enough to warm the planet like 4 to 5 degrees. I mean, it's done. That's written in Stonehenge. I mean, it's an only way to you can't get the CO2 out of the atmosphere fast enough to prevent that from happening. It takes thousands of years to sequester carbon naturally. If you want to do it faster, you need more energy to do that. But the energy requirements for our world right now, the best thing available is what we are burning, which is fossil fuels. You have to build something that actually locks it up in the ground. I mean, you can. I mean, even if you use like certain plants that grow really fast and can take in a lot of CO2, you've got to build structures that will allow you to burn that and then build something else to take in that carbon. It's not going to be 100% efficiency, which is what you need, because that defies the second law of thermodynamics. And at the same time, you need a huge amount of land. We're talking like India, or two amount of land to do that. Well, you're using land production. You're trying to use land for biofuels. You're trying to use land for all these other things. Now you basically create a third major agricultural industry on the planet, because you need to sequester hundreds of gigatons of carbon that have been put up since the British started burning coal, a few hundred years ago. I mean, it's just when it's put in like popular science articles or stuff like that, it sounds all awesome and everything. Like, we can do this, we can do that. It's easy to put in a tweet. But when you actually look at when you actually look at the energy requirements, what you need from business as usual, you need business as usual because that's all you've got to do those things. You need business as you can't do. I mean, you need business as usual to literally get off of business as usual. Like, you want to build full infrastructure of solar panels and wind farm. I mean, you need land for that too, but you also you need huge amounts of mining, and I've heard studies suggesting there's not enough metals to even do that, at least on land. to do that, and
But
sources.
Nicholas, we're going to do it
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
Human ingenuity and technology, it's going to happen anyway. So, things are happening. They're going to do it. Scientists are going to develop things. That's
I
always
mean,
the way
they're
it
gonna
is.
try to do
But
stuff, but they're also they're hitting they're doing it at the very um, end of the ability of human civilization to actually deal with the very thing they're trying to save us from. I mean, this is like the end of the route right here. Like you're approaching the well, arguably we've already fallen off the cliff, but maybe this you
all
hit
right,
the
well,
ground and then you're hitting another cliff.
Trevor just asked, so are we
That's
screwed?
like we still have the ability to produce technology, we still have the produce to do research, we still have the ability to do all of these things.
Yeah, so we're not screwed today,
Business,
Trevor. We're not screwed today. We're talking
yeah,
about the fact that all these things are happening, but we all have to make the changes. We all have to live a great life that we can, as good of a life as we can, but we're watching all these things happening around us. So, but
yeah. I mean,
there's all, like Ed just said, Victoria, he said some countries are doing that. She was talking about painting roofs white, and the other great thing they're doing is green roofs and growing food on them. So see, all these are going to be all these like really cool things that are happening
yeah,
too. So while we're falling apart and while we're passing the tipping points, there's still going to be people that are going to do amazing things like the green roofs and planting trees and all those great ass people. And then there's going to be the technological geeks that we're not going to be able to stop, I don't think, unless we have a extinction rebellion and the other
yeah.
the groups really get somewhere. And
Well,
I
so as far as like to me, um, to me, I don't think there's anything that can be done to stop climate change. There's too much um, baked in and written in the wall. So I mean, I guess you could say we're screwed in that respect. Um, but as far as what people can do, because I mean, people, you know, we need to do things. That's what we do, and so I think it's more of a matter of treating the situation like um, like you have a incurable, like you would treat it if you had an incurable condition that's progressive. Like what would you do with yourself? I mean, I think, beyond doing, you trying to conduct your life as best as, in the happiest way possible. I think there's a lot of things that governments could do, and nonprofits could do, and a lot of things people could do to improve the lives of people as things are getting worse. However they evolve, however those stages evolve, and whatever happens. I mean, I look at the world right. I look at what's happening right now, and I see tons of people that live near coastlines, and I see populations growing, including the United States, along coastlines that are going to be underwater a lot faster than people think. Because those ice sheets are melting extremely fast and faster every year. How about we not have people move to those areas anymore, so they don't have to suffer later on by when there's a titanic storm surge that wouldn't have happened, causes nearly as much damage 20 years ago. Why don't we learn how to organize more local and less interconnected sources like people are talking about? Why don't we uh, do have more resilient disaster planning at smaller levels, local levels, so that when these disasters inevitably happen, there's more effective, efficient help available to them during to the resources? Why don't we do things to help control food waste? I mean, even recycling. People are like, oh, we need to recycle more. Well, a lot of that recycled stuff goes to China. Well, we just burned a ton of carbon fuel to go to China just to deliver something to recycle or burn up too. It's just like, why not do that stuff here? Nobody wants to do it here because nobody wants to deal with the pollution that comes from recycling. So, so build products that are more reusable. I mean, everyone talks about how great hemp is. Well, there's a whole industry that hasn't wanted hemp in the society. We're doing things since since the 1930s with marijuana. Yeah, so it's, there's a lot of things that if we accept it, and I remember writing about this like several months ago, actually, like in October, I think, or November, I remember saying that if, as a global society, we accepted the damage that we've already caused and just dealt with the fact that it's just, for practical purposes, is irreversible, then there's a lot of things we could do. Jim Bendel calls it deep adaptation.
I was going to ask about that, but we don't have enough time. We're getting on to the ending point. But I actually was going to mention the deep ecology, deep adaptation. Perhaps when you come on the next time and Antonio's back, the two of you would like to have a discussion going further on that topic. That would be kind of cool.
That would be good. Yeah, because I think that's the thing that we could do, but instead, we're either denying it or saying it's BS, or people are trying all these silly ideas. They're silly. They're not going to work. I mean, they'll keep trying, but I mean, they're not going to do it. Not going to work. They're not going to work.
Right. Well, Matt just came on. He said it is irreversible. We know, Matt. We know. I mean, but we still have to live with purpose every day, right? And Matt, you above all know that. He knows that. He's a scientist too. And there's a lot of our scientists are that follow us or in our genre. They're the ones that aren't afraid. They're not afraid to say what's going on, And then you've heard of what's his name, Rupert Reed. Oh my gosh, he's not a scientist. What is he? I'm not sure if he's a sociologist, philosophical something, but he was amazing. I've seen a few of his interviews. So there's a lot going on. Kim says go longer. Kim, we've been an hour, and usually that's about the threshold of I gotta
go eat some dinner.
And then you want to go back and watch the video from the beginning if you can. But this was really great. You brought us up to date on a lot of stuff, Nick, and I'll give you a minute to give a closing statement to everybody. Say what you would like to say.
Sure. I think the thing to keep in mind is that as we go forward, we're going to be facing extremes in our weather because of the increasing speed of the thing that the weather is based on, which is the change in the climate. It's going to be changing faster and faster in the coming years to decades, and much faster than we've expected and think. And so I think the best thing to do is to be able to accept that as the reality. Do what you can to live your life as good as possible to the best of your ability, and also be compassionate and show compassion to others as things get worse. Because the thing with these kind of disasters, especially as they start to pile up, is that you're going to see the best in people and the worst in people come out, and it's really your choice whether you want to be the better person or be the worst person. And so I would implore everybody to be the best that they can be in any situation, because there's always, with humanity, there's always ugliness, but there's always a choice to show compassion.
Oh, well, there's some good comments, but if I put them up, we're gonna go over. And I think that I think that we could save that for another time. and I'm becoming pixelated anyway. So thank you so very much. Thank you
Yeah.
everybody for coming. I can just give the two little comments. Matt says the green industry has become embroiled within the capitalist mindset, unfortunately, and the powers that be are milking it for the wrong reasons. Matt, that's another hour. That's another whole
Antonio
hour.
probably have a lot to say about that too.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
knowledgeable on
Well,
that.
definitely Matt will I've been trying to bring Matt on. We'll see what happens. But anyway, good night, everybody, and thank you so much. And peace. And think about the people in Nebraska. And if there are any links that you find, Nick, about donations or helping people and the farmers, I'll put it up. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Good night, everyone. Peace. Share.
Good
Thanks.
night.
Good night.